What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. You got Financial Fitness here, and if you haven't already, appreciate you guys stopping by. If you haven't already, take a second, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Well, guys, there's a big shift that's taking place here, and if you've been paying attention, and I think a lot of you guys are paying attention, you're seeing it. You're seeing it in the grocery stores. Look at the price of eggs right now, right? Eggs are like incredibly expensive, and you'd be surprised how many things are made with eggs in them. So that's going to impact the price of a lot of things that you're buying food-wise. So you're seeing it in Walmart or Publix or wherever you happen to be shopping for food. But we're also seeing a shift on Wall Street and in the real estate market, the housing market, ladies and gentlemen. So, for example, not to mention the Federal Reserve deciding not to lower interest rates as our current President Trump had indicated would happen. So that's actually not happening. Some folks are saying that they're already seeing grocery prices as a whole becoming more expensive. So is this Trump policy that's causing this? Is it inflation? Like, what is it, right? Well, there's a lot of factors here. One of the things that I did want to touch on, one of the key things I want to touch base on is the overall shift, the wealth transfer. Look at real estate prices, right? There are going to be some markets that are going to get hit harder than others. And we're already seeing it. It's like a quiet exposure to the housing market crash, so to speak. It's not as publicized as we've seen in previous years. How bad is this going to get is the question, though, right? How bad is it going to get? Well, it really depends. Number one, a housing market crash, and let's talk about what a crash is, first of all, right? A crash, when it comes to asset prices, asset values, whether it's a stock market crash or a housing market crash, all this means, like, I want people to stop fearing things happening, right? When you're scared, you can't really think as well as you could if you were not scared. So let's just pull the boogeyman out the closet and let's just say, okay, well, what is a housing market crash, right? A housing market crash is, all it means is prices have gone down. And they've gone down fairly quickly, right? So generally speaking, housing values go up over time. But like all asset classes, whether or not you invest in gold or invest in silver, invest in cryptocurrencies or tax liens, if you invest in businesses, you invest in companies, look at the stock market, right? There's no asset that goes up constantly without any kind of like pullback. And when I say pullback, meaning there's no asset class that only increases in value and never retraces at all, like comes or, lowers the value even like for temporary periods of time. So a housing market crash, all this means is, prices are going down faster than normal. That's all that means. Same with the stock market. If the stock market a stock market crash is when lots of stocks have gone down in value very quickly, right? So now if one stock goes down in value very quickly, that's not a stock market crash. That just happens to mean that particular stock went down. That stock individually crashed, right? But if the market crashes, then that means that there's lots of a particular asset crash. There's lots of assets that have gone down within a particular asset class around the same time. So now we know what a housing market crash is. Now we know what a stock market crash is. And the only reason why this would really be bad for you is if you already own those assets and you needed to sell them. Now, if you don't need to sell, it's not really a bad thing. It's really not an issue at all. In fact, it could present tremendous opportunities. So while the media is out here trying to get you to, panic and, with your hair on fire, you can actually think logically and say to yourself, how does this really affect me? maybe it doesn't affect you at all. And you can ignore the media, you can ignore the news and say, hey, the housing market has crashed. My house is worth less than it used to be. But if I'm not trying to sell the house, if I'm not trying to refinance the mortgage on the house or pull cash out through maybe a cash out refinance, then what difference does it make, right? Like, think about it. If you didn't know the value of your home went down because the media didn't try to scare you to making you panic, oh, you got to sell everything. If you're not in a situation where you need to sell, and any particular asset happens to go down in value, but your plan is to hold on to it for the long term, then really, does it matter? Like, sometimes we need to realize what we need to pay attention to and what we need to just simply ignore. So there are also, at least when it comes to real estate, and this really also applies to the stock market too, but let's talk about real estate for a second. So when you have a housing market crash, you will find that there are, generally speaking, some asset classes, let me see. Generally speaking, there are some areas that are going to go down faster than others. Some will be immune to a large extent to generalized housing market crashes, right? So when a housing market crash occurs, to get a better understanding of who's going to be affected, it really helps to understand why that crash is happening. So, if you happen to be in an area where there was a specific reason why your property values exploded, meaning your property values went up fairly rapidly, and that reason for that rapid increase suddenly dries up or goes away, then that would explain why a particular area might go down in value faster than another. Let's just say, for example, Florida, right? Whether it's Orlando or Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Jacksonville, Florida, Tampa, Fort Walton, any of these places, right? South Beach, Florida, whatever. Heck, even Panama City Beach for that matter, right? Lots of vacation destinations. Lots of Airbnb rental opportunities, right? Well, let's just say, hypothetically, a particular area said, hey, maybe a city says, hey, we got too many Airbnbs. This is creating a shortage of rentals for people who actually live here because they need long-term rentals and there's too many short-term rentals on the market. We need to correct this problem. Whatever the case may be for why the city decided that they didn't want any more Airbnbs. And we've seen this before. We've seen it in New York. We've seen it in other cities. So it's not like it doesn't happen and it can't happen. So this is a great example. And it's a great example of why real estate values would have exploded at one point, like really increased in value super quick, because during the pandemic, there were a few states that actually had things open and relaxed mask policies. And Florida was the only state really that you could go to kind of have a vacation. And so investors paid attention to that. They bought properties there and rented them out. Typically, short-term leases yielded a higher rate of return than long-term leases. So that's what they did. They took their properties, threw them on Airbnb and VRBO, and they made a killing. They made a tremendous amount of money, right? This demand drove up the property values because more and more buyers were coming into the market than there was supply of the homes. So that's what drove up the prices. Now, if a city suddenly said, hey, we don't want any more Airbnbs, we're going to cap how many Airbnbs can be here. You got to get a license, you got to get a permit. That would definitely cause a lot of investors to consider getting out of the market or refrain from entering the market, driving down the demand for the properties, and that would also ultimately drive down the prices, right? What we've seen in South Georgia, or I should say south of Atlanta, there are a number of corporate real estate investors that have decided to liquidate homes at a rather concerning rate. Now, I'm not saying all of Georgia or all of Atlanta. I'm just saying south of Atlanta, there are a number of LLC property owners that are selling these properties for 20% under the market. Now, they're not all selling for 20% under, but there are a handful that are listed under 20%. And some of them might need some minor work, which could yield them a higher sale price. But it makes you wonder, why are they not making some of these basic repairs? For example, this property that I saw on Reventure Capital's channel, and he talked about this particular property that was for sale, had the for sale sign in the yard. It was a nice looking house. It was under $300,000. It was like $200,000, 200 something $1,000. And first of all, like, where in America, where in the United States, like what states, cities actually have homes that are still 200 and something $1,000? That's amazing, right? And it was like a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, or I think it was it might have been a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, something like that, for under $300,000. Absolutely amazing. And what it needed was some new carpet. The carpet looked like crap. Now, they were renting this property out for a good, I don't know, since 2013, because you could look at the property records, you could look at the previous sale of that property, which was back in 2013, where they actually bought it for $85,000, which is crazy. I mean, this is significantly less than the cost to rebuild this property. Like, you could not construct this property for $85,000. Let alone, I mean, heck, the land itself is probably worth 85 grand with no house on it. And they bought it house plus land for $85,000. Now, I don't know if they bought it from a foreclosure. More than likely, that's probably what it was. Maybe it was a short sale or something like that, some type of a distressed property situation for them to be able to get it for that price. And who knows what the condition was. But again, the land itself should have been worth $85,000, even if there's no house on it. So regardless of the condition of the house, it's like, man, that was a deal. And chances are they bought it from a bank, and it's an LLC, and this was one of the larger LLCs. So they probably had made a big deal with the bank and said, hey, if we buy up, 100 of your distressed properties all at one time, we need you to give us some really good deals. And so some of these properties may have been just like, just unbelievably good deals. But the point is this is like one particular area. It's south of Atlanta. North of Atlanta, completely different story. You're not seeing those prices being slashed, and you're not seeing the housing market crash take place up there. But what you are seeing you're seeing homes sit on the market for more days on the market, and home sellers are slowly reducing their prices. They're taking the homes off the market, they're relisting them to make it look like it's a new listing, trying to reset the days on the market. But they're not fooling anybody. Anybody with half a brain can see that this house was on the market, it didn't sell, they took it off, they relisted it, whatever. It is what it is. Now, those who have sat on the sidelines for the last 5 or 6 years and watched the market climb on them, making the American dream of home ownership seem further and further away, next to impossible, may actually be approaching one of the most opportune times to potentially consider investing in real estate or purchasing a piece of property, in purchasing a home, then has been available. This opportunity really hasn't been available for a long time, because home prices have only been escalating. But now we're starting to see this pullback. So it's kind of like what we talked about the other day, always having some dry powder. Now, I'm not saying run out there and buy any real estate today. I'm just saying be aware of what's happening. Understand the market dynamics before buying. When you look at the average income in Atlanta, I think it's like, the average income south of Atlanta is somewhere around $85,000 to $100,000 a year. So the economy, the market's pretty strong. Unemployment's fairly low. So this may actually set the stage for an opportunity to invest, buy and hold for the future. I don't think the time is now, but I think the time to prepare and be doing your homework and your research is now, so that you know when that opportunity actually presents itself. And of course, there's deals to be made all the time. So while there may not be, you may not be like stumbling across deals like every single minute, people always need to sell. There's motivated sellers out there. And if you're really looking for a deal, you could probably always find a deal. But yeah, I think the bigger deals are coming down the pipeline, or I think more deals are coming down the pipeline later. But now is the time to prepare, because there's seasons to wealth building. There's seasons to investing, right? There are times when you need to plant your seeds. There are times when you need to identify where you're going to plant your seeds. Each of these are seasons. There are times when you need to, when the harvest is reaped from planting those seeds. So there's seasons to all of this. And you just have to understand and identify, well, what season are we in right now? So that you can make the smartest decision and make the most appropriate action given the season that you're in. So I really do hope that this information is helpful to you guys. I still believe in real estate. I think real estate is a phenomenal asset class. And I think it always will be. But again, it's always like, you need to understand what you're investing in. Always do your due diligence before investing, and understand what your long-term game plan is. Never want to over leverage yourself, because then you end up finding yourself in a situation where if the tide comes back, as Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger used to say, I forget which one of those guys used to say, when the tide comes in, you really get to see who's been out there skinny dipping. And basically, it's like, whoever's over leveraged, when the market corrects, those are the people who get exposed and they get screwed. So don't let that be you. Anyway, hope you guys appreciate the content. If you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys on the next one.